Hello, everyone. I'm here with Denise, Lorenzo's latest wife. And I called him Renzo in the book for most of you guys. Say hi, Denise.
Hi.
This is Denise. Denise is here to be Renzo's voice so that we can remember him, reminisce on him, and honor his name because he was a great individual. So what I want to do first is ask you, why did you choose to meet at this location? What is it about this place and Lorenzo that, you wanted me to meet you here?
This was a very special, very serene place that we have near our house, and it is called the Franciscan Center, and the property here, and here we go again. Okay. Sorry. The property here, if you can see, is property that a doctor who had been ill and was taken care of by some Allegheny sisters decided when he passed away that he was going to leave this to them, provided. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Leave this to them so that they could use this for the betterment of humanity, people. So they do a lot of retreats here, and they sponsor a lot of things, and eventually it evolved into also doing recovery groups. So they do have a lot of recovery retreats for men and women, and it's just been a special place to Lorenzo and I, because when we've needed some quiet in our life, this has been a place to go. And as you can see, there's a water feature, and water is always a very calming element. So this was very special to me.
It feels serene and relaxing, sort of a place that I can meditate at.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. Thank you for meeting with me. Thank you for bringing me here. So let me ask you, you read my book?
I did.
And so what did you think about it?
I thought it was a very emotional, very authentic, because although things that you went through I could not imagine, there was still things that you went through that the feelings you were having I can relate to. So might have been a different experience that I had, but I struggled with those same types of feelings that you had that caused you to get into some of the situations that you got yourself into, whether it was the abandonment issues, the lack of love, the not feeling good enough, not understanding what your personal identity is. And in that search, sometimes we can go to real crazy places. And so that book really resonated with me in some areas. And the thing about it is that it doesn't end with just what you went through. Just seeing the person you are today, because I did not know you prior to having Pito in my life or Renzo. I could have never imagined looking at you today, like, that doesn't look like you ever went through that, So just that in itself shows the courage, the hope, the ability to be able to get through those times that you're struggling with.
Yeah, it was a deep book, difficult to write.
Yes.
Because of the emotions that were resurfacing as I was writing. I was confused a lot of times. I couldn't sleep. A lot of 2:00 thoughts, getting up. It was very emotional, very taxing for me. And, I was just hesitant to actually think that, I would publish this. So I didn't write it as, I was going to write this and publish it. I wrote it sort of like, okay, well, this is in my spirit. Let me just do a journal.
Yes.
And that's how that venture started. But a lot of people don't actually believe that I survived that. And this is why I want to do this a video and the other videos that I've done, to bring in people, the characters in the story, or people related to the characters. Like in Renzo's case, he's no longer with us.
Yes.
And so you are the voice.
Yes.
And you know him, you've been with him, you read the book, and you read his story,
Yes.
His story in my life. And so you know that him and I were very, very close.
Yes.
We actually met the first time when I was being passed around, one of my first moments that I left Brooklyn to come and live with my uncle for a summer, just the summer. It was a summer. And that's when my uncle was the super, and Renzo's parents were the super directly around the corner. So our basements, backyards rather, they joined. And so my uncle got all of these parts, used bike parts, and we assembled my very first bike with used parts.
Yes.
And Renzo was actually on the fence in his property looking at us, and that's the moment when I invited him over.
Yes.
And we became friends, and that became his bike and mine.
Yes.
And so we had a bike. He never had one, and I never had one, and we built it together. So that was our first bike.
I read that, and that was such a sweet part of, that history that I didn't know of his.
Right. That was the innocence.
Yes.
Right? That we
yes.
were all in. And man, I wish I knew better how to do this, and I would shut these phones off. But anyway, they're not so much a distraction. But either way, we have a lot of history together. We've been through a lot, but there was a lot of love. There always was love. And he fathered my one of my most loved niece.
Yes.
And so, so yes, there were good times, and then, the pain started. But it wasn't until 3 decades later, when at an NA convention, we happened to sit at the same table.
Yes.
And that's when I first met you.
Yes.
We were at an NA convention. And so we looked at each other, we got up, and we hugged each other. And we cried. We got emotional. I got emotional at that moment. That was probably one of the most emotional moments that I've ever experienced, because I really didn't think that I would ever see him again. And nevertheless, that we'll go for the same table at an NA convention after 3 decades,
Right.
of battling, of conflict, of issues, and, and love, quite frankly.
Yes.
So to me, that was no coincidence. I believe that was a higher power that wanted to bring us together to bring closure. The unfortunate part about this is that although we exchanged numbers, we sat there, and thank God that there was, someone speaking from a pulpit, and we were distracted, because I really didn't know what to do with myself had I had to face him, and what would I say? And, all of those thoughts were running through my mind,
Right.
And so I was happy that someone else was speaking so that we could pay attention in that direction.
Right.
But afterwards, we exchanged numbers, and he promised that we would talk. And so I called him, and I tried to meet with him, because what I wanted to do was really get together and do something like this. Find a place to sit down,
Right.
to reminisce, and somehow I think that he was afraid to address those feelings, to bring them back. And I was so eager to want to do that, because I needed the closure. I needed to tell him how much I miss and love him, that I really, really forgive you. And I didn't get the opportunity to do that. And that's the hole that I still have in my heart. And no matter how many times I mention this, I still go back to that emotion. Like, I really wanted to bring that closure. And then he died on the motorcycle. and I never
Yes.
got to do that. So I was like eager to meet with you so that I can hopefully feel him through you,
Yes.
so that I can know in my spirit, so that I can know that, he forgives me as well.
Yes.
And to tell you that I forgive him.
Yes.
And hopefully, that his spirit is here with us, and that can help us bring some healing
Yes.
and closure, because you are, a vital part of that.
Yes. I will say to that, Hector, that Pito was the Pito that I knew, which was after he was many years in recovery, and during the whole 9/11 thing, which we'll mention later, he always seemed to protect me from his past. Like, he didn't want to bring any stories or issues, because as a woman, I would keep asking him, you always want to know, well, what about this and what about that? But he always kept that sort of like in a locked box. And I would want to say on his behalf, if you would accept it from me, on his behalf, that I knowing him, I know that he was very remorseful for the things that happened in your lives that brought you pain, and that even surprisingly brought him pain. And so I apologize to you on his behalf. And what I saw from him was a fierce passion for recovery, for newcomers, for people not making those mistakes that he did in his life. So
he was, and I accept your apology on behalf of Renzo. I accept your apology, and I hope that in a quiet moment, when you connect with him, that you can tell him, how much I miss and love him.
I will.
Again, like, there's no coincidence. And, what I failed to do, and, I'm still kicking my butt, about this, is that in my book, I didn't mention the amends and when we met at that convention, which was a pivotal moment,
Yes.
in my life and his.
Yes.
And I got so wrapped up that it just eluded me. And after I printed the book, it came and it hit me like really strong. And it's like, oh, wow. I left that moment out, which was, a pivotal moment in my life and his. And,
Definitely in his, yes.
and so I feel that my story is not complete. And I want to find a way to include that, or I'm actually thinking about a second book. So, although I have no regrets, right? Because everything happened for a reason. That is one thing I kick my own butt for. But I'm sharing it with you. So, hopefully the people that have read the book, can also include this,
Yes.
as part
and
of
they'll hear it now as you speak live, that was something that they include when they're reading it.
Yeah. So tell me a little more about Renzo and what he did, his profession. I mean, I actually know, because I was there at the at his wake, and the eulogy people gave. It was just so emotional.
Yes.
But what did he do, and what led him to that moment?
I'm sorry. So when I met him, he had already retired as an EMT, and he was at that point working for the American Red Cross as a transportation supervisor. And the summer before 9/11, August of 2001, I was looking to volunteer, and I was going to different places, so I had the occasion to go to the Red Cross and sign up to volunteer. And shortly after that, 9/11 happened, and then everything became so crazy. People running in to try to get IDs to go volunteer. And in one of those times, Lorenzo was one of the people that was, or Renzo as he is in the book, was one of those people that were getting IDs ready for people. So I had met him. And initially, it's like, I would have never thought this is a person I'll ever get involved with, because he was just like so not my type. and and so but as I volunteered during 9/11, and as we would see each other and as we would participate in things, our friendship grew, and a real bond grew, because he was the kind of guy that, he'd walk into a room and he would light it up just by his size. And he was big and burly, but man, he had a teddy bear heart. And people used to talk about, man, as they got to know him through me, they would say, man, I love his teddy bear hugs, and he used to always hug people. And that was one of the things that that really got me, so attracted to him. And so from the American Red Cross, he went to New York Blood Center, and he was working as a phlebotomist for a while until some of his 9/11 illnesses became too much for him to continue working. And so at that point, it was the 10th anniversary of 9/11,
And he was a first responder.
he was a first responder there. And it was the 10th anniversary, and we would go to every anniversary together. And we made a decision that after the 10th anniversary, we were going to move to Florida so that he could get a chance to get away from all the triggers, and the same for me. So we moved to Florida, and he was here about a year and a half before he said, Ma, I want to get a motorcycle. This is my bucket list thing. And I told him, you are crazy, but you're an adult. You have kids, you have people in your life that are important. I don't like the idea, but if it's your bucket list, it's your bucket list. So he did get that, and he enjoyed it for the time that he had it. And tragically, on February 1st, 2016, in the evening, coming back from his NA meeting, he was involved in an accident, and he was killed instantly there. So I never really got a chance to see him after that.
You know what's so ironic about that date, and when it actually happened, I was so moved by that, because that is the same day that my dad died.
Wow.
Yeah, and he loved Lorenzo.
Wow.
He really loved Lorenzo so much, including my mom. I mean, we adored him. I mean, he was home. He was our brother, And, man, my dad died on that same day. And so when I shared that, it was like, holy shit, And I've only shared that. You're the second person I shared that with.
Wow, that's like...
Yeah,
intense.
isn't that crazy?
Yes.
And so, I shared it with my sister, actually, which is, his daughter's mother. And we cried.
Yes.
We cried because it's like, wow, that was just so symbolic for some reason. So he was actually a hero.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, he was. And as you said, when I did his celebration of life here in Florida, there was many people there, many people from his NA groups here in Florida, and even some that came from Orlando, which is a mutual friend of ours, Mo.
Which, by the way, just celebrated 35 years. Hey, Mo.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
But I said so on Facebook to you. And so he died in February. We had the ceremony here, and then sometime later, responders from New York, led by one of the reverends who tends to the 9/11 families, and whenever there's different types of shootings in schools or any kind of traumatic thing like that, he's our go-to person. He got very close to Lorenzo because before moving to Florida, Lorenzo really got to a bad place, and
He was suffering with PTSD.
yes, he had PTSD, anxiety, depression. He had also physical illnesses at this point from 9/11. And while we were still in New York, he basically told me, I feel like I'm going to hurt myself or you, so please, we need to do something. And I took him to the emergency room that time, and he was, put in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And this reverend was daily, just pouring into him and building him up. So I was very glad that he did that, because then he was open to move here and realized that he needed to get away from all the triggers of New York. So we did that, and as I said,
Was he actually tired of living? Did he come to that point
I think
where...
there was so much in his brain, he didn't know how to stop it. And a lot of times that's the thing that happens with people who are struggling with addiction. There's like so many things going on in your head, so much. You can't control it. And you try to control it, and it's futile. You just can't do it. And you get to a point sometimes where you feel like there's absolutely no hope. And I never would have thought I saw that in him, because he was always an anchor for me. And he was always like a really steady place for me. But after the ceremony here, I got that call from the Reverend, and he said, a lot of us here from New York weren't able to get down to Florida for his celebration of life. We're not satisfied with that. We need to do something for him here. And so they put together a beautiful ceremony at St. Paul's Chapel, which is kind of unheard of, because to my knowledge, there's not even been family members of 9/11 who have had any kind of celebrations of life there or anything like this. So it took a lot on their part to get all this together. And I remember even I think the president at the time of the memorial and museum, because of this reverend, had even offered us in the building a site to do the reception. Without charging us and telling us we had as much time as we needed to. But at that service, he was given a flag that was sent from Washington. He was given some commendations from senators for his service as EMS and also for 9/11. So I felt at that point that I had done him good. The Pito that I knew, he always stayed in the background. He didn't want to be in the forefront of things, so he wasn't looking for attention.
Yeah, he was sort of a humble guy.
Yes. Yeah. And so for me, I felt that between the celebration of life here and the thing in New York, that I made sure he got what he deserved.
That's great. That's a great story. And I remember them saying that he was a hero. And, unfortunately, he died with a lot of these secrets and a lot of, not letting go.
Yes.
Because I knew, I felt that he was suffocating.
Yes.
Upon talking to, my niece, his daughter, I knew that he had some deep, deep pain, and he just didn't want to face it. He was afraid to look at it. And she would always tell me, Theo, deal, but he loves you. He loves you, and he's trying, and he wants to,
Yes.
but he just doesn't know how. Daddy
Yeah.
is just like that.
Yeah.
So he'd
Yeah.
rather not face it. He'd rather not talk about it because it hurts him
Yeah.
so much to do so.
Yeah.
And so, that's a painful way, to go out and take those feelings with you. And so I thought that he was so overwhelmed with everything, with life and the mistakes that he's made. I don't know if he's made amends, total amends. And I think he just died with that. And, I was always under the impression that at the time that he left on that motorcycle ride, that he actually was tired and he was surrendering. And, and that's just what her and I talk about.
Yes.
I think Daddy wanted to die.
Yeah.
You
And I would say that some of that I kind of felt too, and it made me like really observe him a lot, and I spoke to her about it too. And I will say this, because I know in NA, your higher power is the God of your own understanding. But I will say this, that 13 days before he passed, I remember him coming into the bedroom. He had been in the garage for a long time, and I guess he was, he always used to isolate a little bit in the house and kind of just think about things. And he came over to me and he said, "Ma, I want to do this Jesus thing right. I want to get my life right with Jesus." And I stood there, and I remember it was the middle of January. It was like 13 days before he died. And we said a prayer, and he gave his life to the Lord. And, he surrendered that. And in part of that, was just saying, "Forgive me, God, so I could just forgive others," And he did that. And so in my heart, as much as I miss him every single day of my life, I know he's with the Lord, and I know that, he's just looking down on us. And
so he's made the peace.
oh, absolutely.
He's made the peace.
Absolutely.
So, lastly, Denise, what I want to tell you is, first of all, thank you so much for meeting with me.
Thank you.
I think this was his way of you being his voice and us getting together. I believe that he brought us together, and so that you can bring the closure that him and I needed. And, after this, I'll feel so much better, like I've let go. And I forgive him. And I want to tell you that I forgive him and that I love him very much.
Thank you.
And we miss him.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for meeting with me, Denise.
God bless you. I love you.
Thank you. NA is great.
Amen.
And thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to know more about the story of Renzo, it's a true story. This is why we bring people together that have lived it, that are characters in the book, or someone that knows, like in Lorenzo's case, that's no longer here, to bring the truth to this. And, it's all in the book. So you can follow the book called No Regrets, The Journey.
And I literally brought the book with me because I wanted him to sign it for me. And it is such a powerful book, and it is such a book of, dark nights of the soul, where you feel that there's just no way out, no way up. No way to just see your way through things, but it doesn't end there. And you can see now from this gentleman sitting over here, when you look at what he went through, if this is not survival, courage, and restoration, then I don't know what is.
Yes, it's a story of transformation.
Yes.
And I survived that. I really did survive that. So I'm a testament that you can if you want to.
Amen.
It's all about surrendering, accepting what is, and moving on. And so it's an inspirational story of hope and success. So if you want to follow it, you can get it Amazon, wherever you want, called No Regrets the Journey. My Facebook page is Hector Lafosse, LA space, capital FOSSE. And my Instagram title is No Regrets the Journey, just as the book. Thank you for tuning in. Till next time.